Right before COVID, my oldest son started showing signs of having an addiction to oxycodone. And then that just started to snowball. I was really struck with how pregnancy mirrors grief, and that there was this first part where I was just sick to my stomach. I was nauseous. I didn't feel like I was in the room ever. It really reminded me of the first trimester of pregnancy. And all of a sudden, I had this unshakable need to write poetry, which I had never done before. And to me, that was like my invitation to deliver grief. And I literally sat down and I said, okay, grief, I need you to sit right here. Like, you can't just be inside all the time. When Nicholas died, I feel like there was like a bomb that exploded in our house. And then we just ended up having to live here in this rubble. And I don't think it's ever going to be anything but that.
Stories and Stanza is a podcast exploring creativity, resilience, and the transformative power of human stories. Through our two series, Between the Lines with creators and Fail With Me focusing on wellness and life's challenges, we bring you authentic conversations with inspiring voices from around the world. If you are drawn to meaningful dialogue that both comforts and challenges, follow us on YouTube or any podcast platform. Hi everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Stories and Stanza, where we are joined by our guest, Katie Rizzo today. Hi, Katie. Welcome to Stories and Stanza.
Thank you.
For anyone who has joined us for the first time, very briefly, I run two segments in Stories and Stanza. One is called Between the Lines, where we look at writing, creativity, challenges. And the other segment is called Fail With Me, where I explore psychology, physical health, mental health. So if you like a meaningful discussion, kindly support us in a choice of your podcast platform or YouTube. Coming to today's episode, Katie, for our listeners, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So my name's Katie Rizzo, and I live in the United States. I was a high school biology teacher and anatomy teacher, a really strong foundation in science. I have 3 boys and a wonderful husband. And right before COVID, my oldest son started showing signs of having an addiction to oxycodone. And then that just started to snowball. I ended up stopping work for a while. I thought, I need to really focus on this. And I took writing classes because that was a way for me to get back to myself. And I finished a book and I put it out with an agent. And then my son, Nicholas, passed away. So he overdosed. And right after that, I was flabbergasted. It was a horrible time, but I was really struck with how pregnancy mirrors grief, and that there was this first part where I was just sick to my stomach. I was nauseous. I didn't feel like I was in the room ever. It really reminded me of the first trimester of pregnancy. And then there was a second time when I was just numb. Like, nobody else, if I went to the grocery store, nobody knew that anything had happened. I didn't overtly show or anything, but it was awful. I was really depressed. And since then, I've met a lot of people in grief groups who are in that place. After that, I started reading a lot of books, like Colin Campbell's Finding the Words. And something he suggested in there is ridiculous. He says, say yes to everything. And I really didn't want to, but I started saying yes to everything. So if somebody invited me to lunch, I went. If somebody invited me to yoga, I went. And that started getting me out of my comfort zone. And all of a sudden, I had this unshakable need to write poetry, which I had never done before. I started writing poetry, and to me, this is like the third trimester of pregnancy where you're just showing and everybody knows, because even though I had never written a line of poetry before, I was just writing like mad. And I felt like my son was there. I don't know if that sounds too woo-woo to you, but it really did. And I started posting my poems on Instagram and Facebook. And I started telling anybody and everyone who asked, like, how's your day going? And I would tell them. And I was really surprised because I had before then been a really private person. Like, I had a really good kind of veneer that everything's fine. And now all of a sudden, everything was not at all fine. That people showed up and supported me. And right about then, there was this author, Nick Cave. Do you know him? Have you heard of him? He's also a musician, but he lost two sons, and he wrote about grief that he said that he was carrying it, and then all of a sudden he asked it to sit beside him. And to me, that was like my invitation to deliver grief. And I literally sat down and I said, okay, grief, I need you to sit right here. Like, you can't just be inside all the time. And oddly enough, it's helped quite a lot that it's not in my face at all the times. It can sit here. It's never going to go away. I can't get Nicholas back. And so during this period, as not only just writing poetry, I was keeping a very thorough diary, which I'd never done before either. And my agent said, hey, is any of it something that could help other people in a book? So I sat down and I tried to look at what in here could other people use. And the book ended up being mostly memoir, with a third of it is prescriptive elements of things that I would suggest to do, including write and do poetry. And my agent got it. He got Koehler Books to agree to publish it and Blackstone to do the audio rights. So I'm excited about that coming out because I feel like there are a lot of people out there in grief that are really stuck. And I know how much Colin Campbell's book helped me, and I am hoping that my book can help other people. So that's a little bit about me in a nutshell.
First of all, I'm so sorry for your loss. I
Thanks.
admire that you have found your peace through writing.
Yeah. Love talking about him too. It's almost like magic being able to sit down and write to him. You could get really sad and be like, oh, some people get to talk to their kids. So I had to come to peace with that.
I lost my father in 2019. And
I'm,
the reason why I am sharing that is it was all of a sudden. So
yeah.
I spoke with him, I think Thursday or Friday, and Sunday morning he was gone.
Mm.
He had fallen sick before, like he had blood sugar, so sometimes
Mhm.
the sugar could go up and down, and then he would have to be hospitalized, but he will come back from there. So I thought that it would be another like instance of like hyperglycemia or hypoglycemia. I was telling my mom that call an ambulance, but that time it was a heart attack and he passed away. Because it was so sudden, nobody knew that he was nearing his time. And that is why it was a very hard time for me.
Yeah. What was
Now,
his name?
my father's name was Onu. His passing made me realize that the grief affects very differently to different person. For me, I have always been a writer all my life. I love to write, but before he passed away around that time, because my daughter was also younger, I had no time to write. But then
Mm-hmm.
when he passed away, I resorted to writing as well. And then COVID hit. So it was a very difficult time to process that. And then I wrote. And for a very long time, I felt that I am holding the grief very close to my chest, and just holding it.
Yeah.
It took me a long time to come to peace with it. As in, when you
Yeah.
have questions in your life, you want closure. And then grief is an unexpected space where you know that you're never going to get closure.
No. Yeah. When you were talking about your dad with diabetes, I feel like a lot of times addiction is similar to having diabetes. Like, in that there's so much hope. Like you think, oh, okay, all we have to do, we're going to get his blood sugar to 100. We'll get it back to 100. Oh, it's too high, too low. We'll get it back to 100. And I feel like addiction's the same. Like I always had that hope. Okay, we just need to get him clean. All we need to, we're going to get him clean. We can do this. And I don't know. It's complicated. And I'm sorry about the loss of your dad.
I brought that up because that is how I connect with your story.
The writing.
Yes. And
Did you start with poetry or do you do, what's your writing?
mostly write poetry. When he passed away and then COVID hit us strong. And in Melbourne, we had one of the toughest lockdowns. And my wife lost her job. And then my daughter was younger. And then my wife was also going through a very difficult mental health phase. This is one of the reasons I love to talk about the real life experience when it
Yeah.
comes to
Yeah.
psychology and wellness. Is the diagnosis is often not in a straight line. It takes a long time to go back and
Yeah.
forth at it. So that was a very difficult phase for my wife. When I lost my father, I was in pain and I was channeling that into
Mhm.
words. And for the longest time, I believe that is how it has to be. Like I have to use my pain into writing. I knew about the poetry writing month, and you have to write one poem every day in the month of April. And I never thought that I would be able to do it, but I did because there's nothing else to do. Then I wrote that, and it was sitting there. I didn't show it to anyone, and then I became friends with a writer. I think 1 2 years later, and she was an editor too. She prompted me to go ahead and publish it. Then I published a second book, which is on the similar kind of thinking. And I realized that I cannot forever hold on to this pain. I want to hear your experience on that. Like you mentioned about
It's
finding your peace in poetry. Do you think that you still hold on to the pain? Do you think writing has helped? How do you feel about
such an interesting question because, and I'd be interested in hearing what you think too. I don't know if, no. When Nicholas died, I feel like there was like a bomb that exploded in our house. And then we just ended up having to live here in this rubble. And I don't think it's ever going to be anything but that. Unless he could come back, which I would love if you have a secret. But I think that I'm going to carry my grief always. I went to a grief retreat in Sweden with a bunch of other parents who lost their kids to addiction. And it was beautiful because I got to, I think in grief, everybody carries a lot of guilt, but I think especially parents of kids who have addiction. So it was nice to be with people who have gone through what I've gone through and share with them. And I think something that came out of that, because there were people who had lost their kids 10, 15 years ago. what I came out from that was that I don't think that you ever get over it or move on. My husband says he moved forward. I don't know. This life, it's made me very compassionate to other people, to parents who are losing their kids in wars. I don't know that you move on. I think the grief's just going to stay there with me. Billy Bob Thornton, do you know who he is? He's an actor. He says he lost his brother, and he said, I'll forever be 50% happy and 50% sad. And I feel like that's true. I feel like I have a new set point, and it's never going to be where it was when Nicholas was alive. But I'm still here, and I think there's something beautiful about trying to find a way to describe what's going on. So, does that answer your question?
I don't see this as like a question and answer, right and wrong. I'm just curious to hear about your perspective.
So there's a saying, people will say, grief is love with nowhere to go. And it's a beautiful saying. And it's almost right for me. And maybe it's just because I want to always say, no, that's not right. That is not grief. I want to tell everybody, no, you don't know. But I feel like my love for Nicholas it's right here, and I can give it to him in a minute. My grief is about the past, the guilt, the future. He's never going to get married. So the grief is I think it's just forever a thing that I have to befriend.
If I can go back to what I was saying, I didn't mean to say that move on or we move forward. What I meant is being at peace with it. There is a loss, and that loss is going to be there forever. But does it affect me, or I am at peace with?
No, that's so beautiful. Yeah. And you nailed it. Because finding peace with this is the only way that you can just keep living, right?
Yes. And I noticed that I lost my father in end of September. And whenever that time of the year approaches, I can sense that.
Where do you sense it mostly?
So I keep going to all these off-beat places for holidays, not like places that are really packed. I went to a fishing village recently. It's like maybe 20, 30 families or less.
Okay.
There, going for hours, and then you can find some really beautiful places. So far from the light pollution, I could stand and see the Milky Way, and I feel that we keep saying that when we lose someone, they become stars. This is poetic and real at the same time.
Yeah. At Milky Way, I tell you. Man, I'm so jealous of you. Yeah. Getting away from the light pollution.
In southern hemisphere, there's no one pole star. Everything moves around 4 stars, which is Southern Cross. And then if you keep watching the night sky for a longer time, just sit with that moment, you can see that stars are rotating like this. You can see that this is my pole. And I felt that I was lost for a very long time. But when you make peace with it, then you know that's a point that's not going to change, but your world rotates with it.
That's so pretty.
That is my sort of acceptance for grief. It took me many years to get to that realization.
There's a grief group in it. I think it's only in the US, in Northern America. It's called LIT, Love in the Trenches. And It's for parents who have lost a kid to addiction. And my addiction therapist, when I first met with the lit woman, and I could not stop crying, and I was so upset. And she lost a son too. And she said that she had gone camping and looked up at the stars as well, just like you. I don't think she mentioned the Milky Way, but she said, when I was out there, I realized what a small piece I was and that I could still feel a connection to my son. And once she said that, that was what I knew I needed to go on that grief retreat to Sweden. And my husband and I, when we went to Sweden, we did a 4-day canoe trip where we just went out on one canoe, 2 of us, and camped all over little islands. And I just tried to sit there and look at the stars because there is something to be said about like the moon and feeling connected to it all and knowing that you're one among many.
And I'll go back to something you mentioned, that you were writing poetry, but you were journaling as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd love to hear your thoughts on journaling because I love journaling a lot. And what I mean, I have so many journals.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, I carry
That's so
something.
beautiful.
I try to carry something in person so that I can write it down if I want to.
Yeah.
Like I'm
Yeah.
in a train station or I'm just taking a walk, and if I just want to sit
Right.
down and write something.
There's always a beautiful word or something that you're like, you have to hold on to this, right?
Yes. And I wanted to hear your thoughts around journaling. Did it help?
So yeah, have you ever read the book Big Magic?
No.
I can't remember the author though, so I feel a little bit bad, but she wrote Eat, Pray, Love. In it, she talks about how I don't know if this is too woo, but that there's like all these feelings and thoughts in the world, and that if you slow down and open up, they'll come to you, or that you could be receptive to them. I don't know that I've ever.
Gilbert?
Yes, thank you so much, Elizabeth Gilbert. I feel like just the day after Nicholas died, I mean, I was this person who was like writing YA fiction and just going at it with muscle, and I know science and I'm going to put science into this. And I sat there after Nicholas was gone, and I just realized I just need to write. And I wrote what was happening, what I was thinking, how messed up things were. There were so many things where I was like, if it wasn't so awful, it would be funny. The mortuary called to say that my son's obituary was live. And I was like, what? This is the worst thing anybody's ever told me. But I wrote, and I started feeling this connection. Not like I was like a medium or anything like that, but just that I was tapping into something richer and more meaningful than just myself and just my pain. So my journal was a lot of just facts. And then it started being poems and facts. Do you want to hear my first poem?
Yes, please.
Okay. I wasn't preparing for this. It's up here. So this is the first poem ever that I ever wrote. And it's because my husband found a bird's nest and there were some eggs in it. And I didn't know what he did with them. And later I went and found the nest out our patio, like in a secret like place where nobody would go. And it still had the eggs in them. So here it goes. It says, "We can't have birds living inside our roof. So my husband sealed the entrance, evicted the feathered creatures. Later, I found 2 eggs carefully arranged in a nest, in a secret place, hidden from humans and cats. A deal between my husband and God. No more childless fathers." And so you can see how that's a little bit of journal, right? And a little bit of poetry. And I think that my poems just sprung up from there. And I think they make people uncomfortable sometimes because I post them on Instagram and Facebook because I just want everyone to know that Nicholas was here and he mattered, and that that's just where we're going to be for a little bit, if not forever. But people will say, like, when are you going to finish writing your poems? And I don't know. I hope never. How's that?
Very true. If you are interested, I'll send this to you later. I had a fantastic guest on the show, and he's a
Okay.
journaling coach.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So
And what's his advice? I would love to hear this.
he follows the shadow work principles by Carl Jung, and then he says that we can use journaling in our advantage, like as a self-care tool. In today's world, there are journaling prompts, there are journals you can buy, but if we are journaling at a surface level, then we are missing out on the potential it can.
Yeah.
He made me very curious on this because I realized that I love to journal and I take my journal with me all the time. He made me rethink and question how I journal. And what I found is that if we are curious about our emotions, our behavior, and anything around the world, and then journaling can help us find those answers. Like I'm upset for some reason. I don't know why. If I mention
Yeah.
I am upset, this is happened. I don't understand why. And the answer came back to me later that okay, this is the reason why
I think I heard you talk I know I did, on a podcast with a guest, and she wrote beautiful poems, midnight poems.
yeah.
And she talked about how every poem starts with a feeling. And I don't know, maybe this is something I have been recently sitting down and just being in nature, and I won't know the feeling or the emotion, but I'll just try to find something in nature that speaks to me. For example, today this is unbelievable. There was an osprey and a heron on a lake, and they were fighting. And so I started writing about them, and I started realizing I was thinking about Nicholas. I had the feelings of him fighting his addiction. So I feel like sometimes it's a beautiful thing to start just with and then whatever your feelings are, they're going to shift your lens that way. What do you think?
I sometimes get sensitive, and then anything that happens around, I am able to perceive that, understand that. And then sometimes I get through this very dry phase where nothing affects me or I don't find anything poetic. So that's a bit of an irony and very surprising that sometimes I'm going for a walk. It's in autumn, then all the leaves are changing colors, and you feel that, oh, this is so beautiful. And I noticed there are stacks of leaves near the edge of the lake. You can see that stacks of leaves underwater. Then it brought back my pain and grief, saying that I am keeping. At the surface, you can be so beautiful, but I am keeping those. And if you are careful, you see them.
And if you went down and touched them, they would probably be decomposing and smell. And
Yes.
yeah.
I can remember that image because that stayed with me for a.
After Nicholas passed, we went to another support group called Compassionate Friends. I think you have that in Australia. I don't know. But it's for anyone who's lost a child. And I met a woman there who lost her son, who was my son's age. He had cancer. And she invited me to go with her on a hike. And we went, it was like Arizona. I live in Arizona, so it's very desert and very dry. And we went right before the heat, and everything was dead, and there wasn't anything alive. And we got up there, and I said, this is what my heart feels like right now. It feels like just the moon. And she and I just looked at each other. We're like, this is where we live. This is a perfect analogy. This is a great place to be. Like, we wouldn't want to be somewhere beautiful because that desolateness spoke a lot to us. Yeah.
I'd like to share something one of my guests told me and apparently he found an episode that I did close to a year ago. I was talking to a psychologist and we were trying to unpack what level of support we need and how do we know what support we need. It was such a sensitive subject. It took us like 2 hours to unpack. So this episode had a lasting impression on the guest. He struggled with addiction, alcoholism for a very long time in his life. And then he became sober. He's now writing his memoir. And he said that for the longest time in his life, he thought he was an addict. But when he started getting help and support, he slowly understood that he had some mental health challenges, which is why he got diagnosed. He was relieved that he was not an addict, he was hiding from the real challenge with
Yeah.
addiction. And the reason why he came to my podcast is because I spoke about something similar in the past and I didn't hold back the vulnerabilities that I had my
Mhm.
challenges, I had my troubles. And then when I explored that in that episode, it was very brutal and honest conversation.
Mhm.
Somehow it touched him and he felt that this is what needs to be talked about.
So, wouldn't you agree that most people who are struggling with addiction do have mental health challenges? Like that there's something they're trying to.
So it would be bad to generalize. I'm
Okay.
saying from a curiosity point of view. And I wanted to hear from you if there is anything you would like to share with our audience today that you have been processing the events for a very long time. Do you
You're so
think
sweet.
that your experience could help others?
I feel like Nicholas got involved in using Oxycontin from, he was a soccer player. Um, in Australia, do you guys call it soccer or do you call it football?
Yeah, it's called football. Yeah, football.
Okay. So he was a football player and he was really good. And he would get an injury and he broke his leg, he broke his arm, he broke his shoulder. And every time he'd go and get bandaged up and they would give him Oxycontin for the pain. And I think that if you do Oxycontin too many times, I think it becomes very difficult to stop. I think he had a genetic component of addiction. I know his grandfather and his dad have addiction and they both struggled with it, but AA helped them. But I remember when so Nicholas went to college and he played football there and his elbow was dislocated. And when they were trying to put it back in, they were like, we've given you the maximum amount of painkillers. He was screaming and he was like, you have to give me more. And I should have known there was something going on then. But I think he was taking it because it felt good. And I think when you do too much Oxycontin, I think the receptors on your body expect to have more and more, and it just snowballs. So I don't know. I feel like most people who have addiction are trying to fix some underlying thing. I think Nicholas was trying to figure out how to be happy, even though he had just destroyed all of his receptors. I don't know how they deal with addiction in Australia. I hope it's better than the way they do in the US. But there's a big stigma here to buckle up and get clean, and it's definitely, there's a stigma that there was something wrong with him, that he wasn't strong enough. And I think also, I think since he's gone, I think there's a stigma about the family, that our family didn't give him something, and so he was looking for it in the drug. And I hope that is not true. So I don't know do they deal with addiction in Australia?
I do not know much why I was asking that in terms of mental health. That when someone is suffering, it is very hard for them to articulate what they're going through. It's not humanly possible to say it as black and white. And then there are loved ones around them who are trying to care for them, protect them, who are equally suffering because they don't know what their loved ones are going through.
Yeah.
And then there are people around them, like neighbors, society, workers, and everyone, and they have no clue what these people are going through. So I think there is a broader reason to talk about it, because it is not possible for everyone to articulate their problem. And
Yeah.
the least we can be is sensitive, respectful, and compassionate towards.
You are so sweet. It's funny how many people have asked, since they know what's happened to Nicholas, have called me or emailed or texted me and said, my husband is dealing with addiction, or my son's dealing. Don't tell anyone. Whatever you do, this is the biggest secret. And of course, I would never tell anybody. But I wonder if everybody started being honest about, what's going on in their lives, maybe that would be better.
I struggled with expressing what I am going through for a very long time. I was keeping it to myself. And then I burned out and I realized I cannot possibly face everything with determination. I need to change my approach of going to manage this. Mental health is not something like a cloud that all of a sudden is going to go away and there will be sunshine. We need to learn to manage it. Like we need to keep an umbrella with us in person in case it rains.
Yeah.
There is the awareness and education, I think, that needs to happen in mental
Yeah.
health space. And addiction is not separate, is what I'm trying to say. Is a challenge that someone who is going through that, only they know what they're going through. Even they cannot articulate to their loved ones, and the loved ones cannot share it with others because of stigma and the challenges, the boundaries, shame, guilt, and whatnot.
Something you said about the ripples. I was at a grief support group, and there was a mom who lost her son to addiction, and she was fine at the beginning of the meeting, but then all of a sudden in the middle, she was like slurring her words, and then she passed out and fell on the floor. And I think she had taken something. And I didn't blame her. Here's a mom whose son died of addiction. How is she supposed to get through the day, right? I just think that if we all could just be a little bit more understanding and see, instead of being like, oh, here's somebody who is an addict, here's somebody who's hurting. Here, let me help them.
Now, when you look back, do you sense that you had a period of guilt with your grief?
After he passed away,
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. 100%. I feel like a lot of grief is guilt. Did you have guilt with your dad's passing?
Yes, I
Yeah.
felt that I could have cared for him better. And what I noticed is that he got bitter with his age. And I often tell my mom, you have to take care of yourself. I think, again, I'm not a professional. It is my perception that if we are angry or upset or whatever emotions we are feeling, if we do not process it, then we harness it in our body in some way.
Oh, for sure. 100% of that.
And I felt that while he was aging, he got increasingly bitter because he didn't have an outlet per se. And he probably would have lived longer if he learned to
Oh.
manage that. And for example, if I told him, like his doctor advised that he take help of a therapist, but a psychologist, and he wouldn't open his mind to the possibility that he was too proud. When we are talking about mental health, I think it is very important to open our mind to the possibility that we may need help.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's been frustrating for me the last 4 years of Nicholas dealing with this. You bringing the force to drink and he won't drink. So he wasn't willing. I think he was so embarrassed and ashamed that he wasn't willing to honestly sit down with a therapist. Even when he was in rehab, he was like, yeah, I'm fine. I am going to be fine. I don't know why, as a community, that we all feel like being strong is so important.
In this podcast, I often talk about self awareness. When I look at my period of absolute burnout, is that the false sense of strength and pride. And that comes
Yeah.
from an ego that,
Yeah.
we think this is what we are. We haven't put much thinking around that ego we are harboring that may not be accurate.
100%. And I feel like when Nicholas passed, it was like I shed a lot of my ego. I was going to say all of it, probably not all. I feel like I was paraded down the street as the bad mom who lost a son. And I was willing to take it. Like, my husband and I went to this place where we work out, and the instructor said something about, she's like, oh, we're not like one of those bad parents who have addict kids. And I was like, I'm I am a mom who has a kid with addiction, and he died of it. And it just, I just don't have time for that kind of game anymore. And I want to be with people who are committed to being kind and honest about who they are.
This reminds me that the what you're referring to, like labeling people as good and bad, that judgment. And this is something I wrote very recently, last year or the year before Mother's Day. Was coming across a lot of messages here and there, people complaining about mothers. They're saying, "Oh, my mother was bad. Oh,
Yeah.
my mother did
Yeah.
this. Oh, because of my mother, I'm getting therapy now." And it me feel that it's possible for mothers to be incomplete. Is our responsibility to complete their story. We do not know what they were struggling. We do not know why they did what they did at that point of time. So instead of being bitter, we can look at it. If we don't have compassion, at least look at it from clarity, just to
Yeah.
understand
We,
their story was incomplete, why
yeah.
they were struggling with what
Yeah.
they were struggling. They didn't know at that time because they didn't have maybe to diagnose.
Yeah. There's a song, I can't remember who it's by, so maybe you can look it up. It's called The Baton, but it's about being a daughter and watching your mother not being able to give you as much as you needed to give. So, yeah, that was beautiful.
We talked about grief, we talked about addiction, the stigma of mental health, so many, and nature, inspiration, so many
Mm.
beautiful things. Is there anything you'd like to share that you still feel challenged by, which you think that it is very hard? It is. If you share with anyone, then it would probably lessen your pain.
I feel like I shared that I'm always going to be in grief. And I wish there was a way that I could connect more with people. You know how people are like, how are you today? And you just want to be like, I am not the person I was 4 years ago. I'm meh. I'm never like and I don't want to give anybody, dump on anybody and say, I'm not good, but I'm as good as I can be. I feel like I would like to be able to have small talk because we are communal beings. We want connection. And it's hard to connect with somebody who wants you to be putting on this face of, I'm perfect, everything's fine, I've gone on, I've learned a lesson, I've figured out the meaning, when there isn't a meaning, right? Like, it was a tragic, terrible thing that happened, and tragic, terrible things happen all over the world. And I'm one, as a lot of moms, unfortunately, who have lost their kids. And I don't know, just like, how do we have real connection? So let's put that out into the world.
I guess not a very simple answer, but to me also, I have struggled to form genuine connections because people can be judgmental. At some stage, I realized that I cannot stop people from being judgmental. I cannot change people unless they really want to change. And at the same time, I'm not going to open my boundary to let someone in because I don't know whether they're judgmental or not. So it becomes counterproductive to the human connections we
I
seek,
know.
right?
I know. If there's anything I've learned from Nicholas's death, though, it's that we are creatures that just need other people. And those little things that other people can do, like they'll get you through everything. Yeah. I have a friend who she would just show up and say, hey, we're going for a walk. And we wouldn't talk. Maybe I'd cry, but it was just every few days we'd just go for a walk. So going to the grocery store and not having a superficial conversation, but actually meeting somebody where they're at. Like, that's important. It's way more important than I think we give it credit.
Yes. And we live in a very strange time where we have, instead of being mindful or being emotionally present in the moment,
Yeah.
we have heightened our threshold of excitement and adrenaline to such a
Yeah.
height that we do not perceive the gentle moments in life,
Yeah.
which is counterproductive to
Yeah.
having a genuine connection. So you need to sit with it. You need to accept it. It doesn't have to be like super exciting, super stimulating.
Yeah.
All-
And when you see somebody struggling, stop and help. Like, found I've started becoming a person that I don't even recognize. I see somebody numerous times on the side of the street pushing their car because they're out of gas or whatever. I'll be the first person now to get out because I'm like, hey, I've been in a metaphorical car that is not going anywhere, and I know how horrible that is, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And Reverse is also true. I think universe has this way of connecting people
Yeah,
with
100%.
just same level of energy. Because when I started my podcast, I had no idea who will come talk this and what am I going to talk. And 2 years down the line, I have so many stories I can work with, I can share. And
Yeah, that's a big gift.
this is something one of my guests told me recently, and I am still processing that. It was so beautiful that she said, your superpower is listening. Our
Mm,
hearts know who to tell. So treasure that and keep doing what you're
yeah. You should go back and watch how you lit up when you said that was sweet.
doing. Yes. And I never thought about it, that
Yeah.
which is why people connect and want to be on the podcast. I haven't created this as a community or anything. The reason being there's too much information overload in today's world.
Yeah. Yeah. I hear you. Yeah.
I think we talked about a lot of important aspects in today's world, and thank you for being so open and honest about sharing your story. There are so many people who are suffering in the world, and they don't need a solution. They need a soothing voice. They just need that presence.
Yeah. And sometimes they just need a way to put it into context, reframe it, and see it as not being bad or wrong, but see it in a different category.
Is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners?
Um, just hopefully that on October 6th, that's when my book, The Trimesters of Grief, is coming out. And hopefully people who need it will read it. And my friend Maddie at I can't remember her production company, but she put together a book of my poems that are going to be out called None of Them Are You in late October. Oh, Extra Publishing, that's what it is.
And put the when the book comes out, we will put the book links in the episode
Thank you
description.
so much. Yeah.
6th of October happens to be my birthday. So
Really?
yeah.
I believe in stuff like that. So that is a nice coincidence.
Thank you once again for your time. And I'd like to thank our listeners and viewers on YouTube today for joining us for this conversation. Please support us in a platform of your choice. Thank you once again.